All right, hello everyone. Good morning. Whew. You can tell for those at home that I just dashed in the door because my glasses are so dark. Made it here. Wow.
It's only 9:49.
Oh, good. Thank you.
What? The time kept changing. What time were we supposed to meet?
Oh, well, we're supposed to start at 9:45. We never do. But I was afraid I was going to be pushing 10 o'clock. I was running so late. And here we are. Whew, Lordy. You know, it's crisp outside, but it's not horrible.
No.
It's not horrible.
It's not windy.
It's not windy.
That's the bad part.
Yeah. So some of y'all are going to get a special chuckle out of my dream last night, Charlene, Joni. I just want you to know I dream about Sunday school sometimes. And last night I had this very vivid dream that for whatever reason on this day, it was Sunday before Thanksgiving, and we had been asked to move to the chapel for whatever reason for this Sunday. But the chapel wasn't like the chapel. It was very different. But yeah, we were in the chapel, and this is a certain someone who used to be director of a certain class in this church, who was a very difficult person, had brought her class in there to take over the chapel, and we had to fight it out to see who was going to have the chapel then, and we won.
We won.
Yeah, I think I was reliving some of my past in that as well. Which actually has a connection to today's lesson when we get there. Sorry, I look like a rock star right now with my glasses in their sunglass mode on this. We're so glad to have Kate McKeever with us today. Kathy to some, Kate to others.
I say it's Kathy to my beloveds.
The oldest child of Bruce and Luana, and pianist. She plays every week at two churches in North Carolina, where she lives. Are they at different times?
Yes.
Obviously. That was a stupid question.
I appreciate it now coming back to Dallas. I'm 10 minutes from one church. Do that. 10 minutes to the next. Easy peasy drive. No traffic. Sunday morning.
Yeah, welcome back to Dallas.
Yeah.
Well, it was a beautiful service for Luana on Friday, lovely in every way, and the family stories that were told were just spectacular. I did a funeral yesterday out in Mesquite, and I actually quoted part of the story about Luana shopping for her pair of pants for her casket.
Tell that story.
It's a great story. Shannon told about within the last couple of weeks before she died. Luana's a big shopper, and this package arrived at the door from Chico's. And Shannon said, "Mom, why are you still shopping? You know, she's on hospice. She's in her last days. She knows she's in her last days." And she said, "Well, I need a new pair of pants to wear in my casket. My other pants don't fit." Well, I actually use that as an illustration to talk about. I pulled a passage from Colossians about where the Apostle Paul says, "Above all, dress yourself in love." And I use this passage at weddings a lot, but for the first time I actually used it at a funeral yesterday, because one of the things I often say at funerals is the thing that matters most, the way we measure a life, is in love. And when the Apostle Paul says the thing that we should dress ourselves with is love, that really carries over to life. Well, enough of that. Today, in our series, Bible Verses We Love, where we're just sort of popcorning through the Bible and finding different passages, I thought, well, I'll come up with one that has something to do with Thanksgiving for today. And this is another extremely well-known passage, but I hope we can see it in context. And this is going to require a lot of audience participation today in this conversation. We're looking today at Philippians chapter 1. Philippians chapter 1.
can we still, I wasn't here when we,
Yeah, shoot me a note. I'm open to all suggestions.
okay.
I hope you guys are enjoying this. I'm loving just the variety of it myself because it's interesting to pop around. Philippians chapter 1. Oh, by the way, any of y'all see the Jeopardy show this week where they had the big mistake?
What was the name?
Yeah, big problem on Jeopardy. Oh my God.
I yelled at the TV.
Well, I think a lot of people did. Yeah, they had a Bible question that was just flat out wrong, and it determined the winner. I mean, it was really important.
When was it? They haven't.
Well, they've not acknowledged their error. No, they haven't.
Because of course it doesn't air until a long time.
Yeah, it's
after
recorded
it's already
before and then
happened.
it airs, so it's all done.
And no one caught it?
No. I wrote a story about it. You can go read about it on B&G. Yeah, it has to do with the book. Well, it has to do with the book of Hebrews.
The
And
question was.
what was the question? The answer was.
The question was, which of Paul's epistles has the most recognized quotes?
Of the Old Testament.
The Old Testament.
Old Testament
Old
quotes.
Testament.
The most Old Testament quotes.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, and the answer should have been Romans, but the answer they were looking for was Hebrews.
And that's when I yelled, Paul didn't write it.
Paul did not write Hebrews. We don't know who wrote Hebrews. And also, a lot of biblical scholars don't consider Hebrews to be an epistle because it doesn't have has the form of a sermon, not of a letter. And third, Romans has more Old Testament quotes in it than Hebrews.
Yeah.
So it was wrong 3 ways. And they let it through. Crazy. Philippians chapter 1, verse 3. I thank my God every time I remember you, constantly praying with joy in every one of my prayers for all of you, because of your sharing in the gospel from the first day until now. I am confident of this, that the one who began a good work among you will bring it to completion by the day of Jesus Christ. It is right for me to think this way about all of you because you hold me in your heart. For all of you share in God's grace with me, both in my imprisonment and in the defense and confirmation of the gospel. For God is my witness, how I long for all of you with the compassion of Christ Jesus. And this is my prayer, that your love may overflow more and more with knowledge and full insight to help you to determine what is best, so that in the day of Christ you may be pure and blameless, having produced the harvest of righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ for the glory and praise of God. Several verses in here we know very well. The one I really want to focus on is the first of those, verse 3. I thank my God every time I remember you, constantly praying with joy in every one of my prayers for all of you. This is, in our experience, this is a passage that's most often used when someone's leaving us, when someone's departing, like a pastor or a beloved friend or someone. And we haul out this verse because it's the most descriptive anywhere in Scripture of gratitude, thanksgiving, and remembrance for a shared experience together. And so I think we often hear it in that context. In its original context, Paul is already apart from the church at Philippi. He has been there. He's helped them. Now he's writing from afar. So this is not a parting hymn. It is a letter written after he's already gone. And he's looking back and saying, I thank my God on every remembrance of you. This is not a so long farewell, auf Wiedersehen, good night. This is, after some time has passed, I still remember you in my prayers. There are 2 key words in this passage. Well, actually, there's 3. One of them is easier to deal with, and we do it first. When you read this whole section, the word all just jumps out over and over again in different forms. It's in the form of every time and all. So I thank my God every time, all the time I remember you. Constantly, always praying with joy in all my prayers, every one of my prayers, for all of you, because of your sharing in the gospel. So it's this idea is really, all. It's inclusive. It's the extreme in this. But the two words I really want to focus on for today are thanks and memory. I want to challenge you to think, when you sit down at your Thanksgiving table on Thursday, wherever you may be, whether in a large group, small group, or even by yourself, will you express thanks for things in that moment? Yes. But most of us are also primarily mindful on Thanksgiving of things that have happened in the past. People who have shaped our lives along the way, right? We remember and we give thanks. We give thanks because we remember. And I think a lot of times we fail to comprehend how important memory is to our Thanksgiving. Does this make sense?
Yeah, but I think when we sit around the Thanksgiving table, you thank God of what you have around us now and the people around you. Rarely do we ever start talking about, and we thank God for great uncle so-and-so who passed away.
Well, your
10
family
years
must
ago.
be messed up then.
I mean, we never think, we're thankful for what we have and the people around the table, but we don't start. Whenever I say that, is because when you talk about things you're thankful for, it's in your prayer before the dinner, and you're not going back saying, and I remember back.
Well, I want to challenge you to think about this in a new way.
I mean, it's
because I think the idea of Thanksgiving is much more inclusive than the present moment. Right?
So you bring up and think of.
So we're thankful for those who've gone before us. We're thankful for them.
And you state this in the prayers?
Well, sometimes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, doesn't even the conversation around Thanksgiving evolve into remembrances of those loved ones who've gone before? How can you sit around in a family conversation and not think about those who preceded you, those who birthed you, those who nurtured you?
Those who you used to spend Thanksgiving with.
Yeah.
Right, along the way, right?
Yeah, the recipes we use are often.
The recipes, yeah, beautiful,
shared.
yeah, yeah.
Well, and I always think of, I'm grateful for this country, as messed up as we can be.
Yeah.
As messed up as the Pilgrims were sometimes. We're the best there is.
So gratitude for our country, even despite our problems, our messed upness, right? And those are forebears. Yeah, so I love the recipe point. So Luke and Tori are coming in Wednesday night late, and Luke has already told us he wants to learn how to make my mother's chocolate pie. So we're going to have an instruction session on pie making one day along the way. And that's how these things get handed down, right? Yeah. One of the smartest things I ever did, some of you will remember this, at my mother's funeral, we had a reception down in Community Hall, and we served all of her favorite foods from her favorite recipes. John Yost was our chef at the time, and I gave him her recipes, and he made the things.
Did he do it right?
He did. Yeah, he did.
And our family is going through this right now because I'm in North Carolina. One sister is in Arizona during the winter. The other one is in Nashville. We no longer have a home base in Dallas. My nieces and nephews are scattered from New York to all over the country.
Right.
And gone are the Dallas Thanksgivings where we were all together. And we realize now that if we want to get together, we're going to have to make more of an effort in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, getting together when things change.
We've lost our central focus, you know.
You know, I had a temporary mind slip yesterday, and I actually was fantasizing about this very thing. For many, many years, our family gathered in Austin at my aunt and uncle's cabin on Lake Austin. Mm-hmm. And they've been gone 15 years now and more. And I thought, what if we just acted like nothing changed when we showed up? Because there is a nostalgia to this where we want to go back, right? There is a nostalgia. Kate, I was hit with profound nostalgia on Friday as we were sitting in the service for Luana, and I'm on the chancel with Marianne Hill and Doug Haney and George, and we've got all these folks who remember Luana, and for a moment I thought, I've been transported back 10, 15 years, right? And I just almost became teary at the nostalgia from that. Okay, I have Ann first, and then Charlie.
Well, when I got married many years ago, my mother gave me her stuffing recipe, and I still have it. And I just remember as she wrote out the ingredients, and then she said, and sage, but not too much.
But not too much.
Not too much.
Yeah, the recipes are a beautiful way of passing down memories, right? And by the way, a clever thing I've seen some people do is when their parents, whether mother or father, are really excellent cooks, and the family has loved that, what they will do often is make videos of that parent making a favorite recipe, so they can walk you through what they're doing. It's not just a piece of paper. And what a beautiful memory that is, where you can play it back, right? And see the person and hear their voice. So that's a beautiful memory. Okay, Charlene.
Well, I was sitting surrounded by people who we had been young teenagers together.
Yes. Memories, right, Jim?
A quick thing. My grandmother made her famous boiled custard. Everybody loved it, and Mom's going, I've got to learn how to make this before she starts losing her mind. But she didn't tell her that, but she goes, I need to know. So Grandma would just a dash of this, a pinch of that,
Right.
throw in stuff, just
Dash and
amounts,
pinch will get you in trouble every
and
time.
Mom is just throwing bowls under it, catching it, and then measuring it out. And I've still got that card, and it's changed so many times the amounts of everything, of how much of this little bit is, but then sure enough, years later, her and her sister, who fought like this, would come over to Thanksgiving, and they're going, we can't seem to figure out how to make our custard. Do you still have that recipe? And Mom gives it to them. And they made it so bad. They came over and it was like broth. And Mom goes, I'm sure it's going to set up just fine. And she went and got out the pudding mix and everything else and mixed it up and made it real thick. And then she goes, look, it did set up fine overnight, see? But somebody posted some this week and it said, totally off the thing, and it said, when the matriarch or patriarch of a family, a group family, passes on, so often you lose the central dynamic that
Right.
keeps the family together. And how many times have we seen that? You've just said it.
Right.
When one passes on, and then because nobody knows where to go now, and everybody has their own little politics and their own little stuff, but they would lose them when they come to the central table.
It is a unique kind of loneliness when your last parent dies.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry.
Right?
I used my grandfather's recipe on my birth mother's side of the family. He was a cook in World War I and was a fantastic cook. And I use his dressing, his stuffing recipe.
Yeah.
And he said he likes the celery and onions cut up and really cooked
Yes.
until they're very soft. He said this makes it digestible. That's what's And then the secret though is white pepper. It has to have white pepper.
White pepper.
Do not use black pepper. But my point is this: that side of my family, my grandparents have been dead for decades. My aunt and uncle both died of COVID 2 years ago, and there was no memorial service. I was in North Carolina to this day. We've had no recognition of that. They had children, and two of their children, two of the boys, showed up Friday at Mother's service. And I cannot tell you how much that link meant to me.
Yeah.
That's all. I'm sorry.
Beautiful, beautiful story about family connections. And you guys are illustrating beautifully the very thing I want to draw out of this passage. The connection between thanksgiving and memory. Now, let me turn this stone just one more time. Well, this may not be the last time. Let's turn it. There's a dark side to thanksgiving and memory as well. And that is something that I have spent my life trying to figure out, and I still don't understand. Why people would willingly leave a legacy of meanness and hate and difficulty. Because not all of us are blessed with pleasant memories of our loved ones or family members. Many people, more than we would like to admit, have had difficult people in their lives, whether family or friends or neighbor or coworker or whatever, who, I've been debating whether I can use this term in here, but I'm going to use it anyway, just are assholes. Sorry sons of bitches. While I'm at it, right? Fire me. Okay. But we all know these people who are so difficult for all of life. Everything is a trial every time you're around them. And you've got to wonder what kind of memory and legacy do they think they're leaving? Now, some of them are old school people who think, well, I'm making you tough so you'll survive. That's what my parents did to me, and by God, that's what I'm going to do for you, right? And they think they're doing a loving thing by being harsh. Other people are just living out the pain they experienced and passing it on to others. But there's I think Paul's passage here calls us to think about our legacy of love as well. What kind of memory? Dwayne?
Since my mother died some years ago, yesterday, for the umpteenth time, I tried to duplicate her cornbread recipe. It was okay. It was good, but not the same.
But not the same.
Yeah.
Right.
Keep hoping.
We all try, right?
Yeah.
We all try. Yeah, Carolyn?
Our family was always a little different because we were scattered. I'm the only grandchild in our family that remembers both sets of grandparents.
Oh.
And yeah, and I mean, they didn't get to meet them, or, you know, I was blessed by my grandparents, and I feel real bad that my sisters and brother didn't get to. But we've gotten together as well as we could, because like this year, I'm going to be at my sister's house for Thanksgiving, but my other brother and my other sister are in Brazil.
Yeah.
So we can't get together.
So the distance. You know, it occurs to me, I had this brilliant thought. It just went straight out of my head. Never mind.
It'll come back.
Yeah.
You know, as you get older, and I mean older, not your age, one of my greatest goals and friends that I have is that so many old people may not be as embittered as what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But they just think, you know, I'm 65, I'm 70, I'm 75. I can say anything I want to say. That just no filter at all. And that gets pretty obnoxious.
The no filter can be obnoxious. Yeah. It's cute for a minute. Charlene?
From Ellen, I think it's possible that some of those difficult people are people who suffer from depression and maybe undiagnosed mental illness and stress of holidays makes it worse.
So the comment is some of those who are difficult probably suffer from undiagnosed mental illness and depression, and the stress of the holidays may make that worse. I think that's a fair diagnosis in our lay terms, for sure. Oh, I remember what I was going to say a minute ago. Even mediocre recipes can be remembered fondly if they're delivered with love. If you're in a loving environment and a warm place, even if the recipe is not the best thing in the world, your childhood memory may be that it was. Because, you know, sometimes if you go back and try to make things that were beloved in your childhood, you wouldn't eat them today. Right? Yeah?
Well, this is my cousin, Janie Sims.
Hello, welcome.
From Stigler, Oklahoma, but mostly Oklahoma City.
Oh, okay, fellow Okie here.
Yes, a little north of Moore.
Yeah.
But anyway, she lives in Decatur right now. But you know, we're cousins, not identical. But just what you're bringing up, we have very fond memories of being together, but it was not always a good time. I mean, we had some horses' asses. I suppose sometimes we can be.
Yeah.
But one of the things, there was a time, I guess, when I was in high school, maybe through college, Janie and her family would come down. We lived in Wichita at the time. Anyway, my mother and some of the girls would cook, you know, and blah, blah, blah. And I was younger and I'd make a pie, you know. Anyway, mom always, her father had been a cook during the Depression or someplace,
right.
And he would put a little bit of...
He was a pastry chef.
Ah, okay.
And would put yellow
food coloring in the
to
pie
kind of,
crust.
yeah,
Oh,
To give it a glow.
give it a glow. Yeah.
to give it a glow.
But what did he put it in?
Okay.
The pastry crust. But perhaps he also did that, or mom, I don't know, mom's mind went somewhere and she decided because that's what he did and she was out of yellow, she put red in the gravy.
In the gravy.
Red food coloring in the gravy.
Yeah. And was amazed at it, you know, like, well, I don't know. So that
Let's have some blood sauce on
it
that.
tasted fine, you know, but it's like you were pouring, you know, pink gravy on there. And yeah, of course that's become a, you know,
It's a family story. It's a legacy,
That's
right?
the thing, you have family story.
And
keep it together without.
so
like,
even
we're
these
gonna have
crazy
to break-
things are beautiful memories that bring us back into a moment, right? And one of the reasons food is so important in our memory is because it hits 2 and maybe 3 of our senses. There's a visual to it, like this, but there's also the sense of smell and the sense of taste. And we all know that the sense of smell is a profound way to provoke memory. I mean, most of us can walk into a room and smell a certain smell and be immediately transported back. A friend gave me a ride recently in a 20-plus-year-old luxury European car that he had, and I sat down in the car, and the smell of the leather, it's a very specific smell of leather, right? Came wafting over, and I immediately was transported back to my father-in-law's car from 35 years ago, right? It just, you're there, right? Just because of the sense of smell. And I think this is one of the reasons we talk about food so much when we think about family memories, because you've got the sight, the smell, and the taste, all 3 working to bring us into a moment, plus the memory of holidays along with it as well. So when the apostle says, I thank my God upon every remembrance of you, he may not be, maybe they had fellowship meals, probably so, but there is a deep idea here that even after he's gone, the memory prompts him to gratitude. And then from there, he moves on to a prayer for them that they will abound in God's love and in good works and all of these things that he wants them to do. I am confident of this, that the one who began a good work in you will carry it to completion by the day of Jesus Christ. Now, there's a problem here, because Paul seems to think that their work will be complete when the day of the Lord comes, and this is a reference to the Old Testament vision of the coming day of the Lord. But for Paul, this would have meant the second coming, right? That still hasn't happened, and he seemed to think it was imminent at this point, right? But he says, it's right for me to think about you this way because you hold me in your heart. and all of you share in God's grace with me. You hold me in your heart. We tend to say this the opposite way. I hold you in my heart. But Paul is thankful in knowing that they are holding him in their hearts. This is encouraging to him. We don't know what other correspondence has gone on before this to give him this idea, but he longs to be with them and prays for them in multiple ways that are outlined here. And the point for today is not to get into all of the ways that he prays for them, but to really focus, I think, on this idea of thanksgiving and memory and how they go together in our own experience, right? We've talked about food, but I'd like to turn the conversation for you to think about, if you imagine sitting around a Thanksgiving table this week and think of the people who are not there, right? Clearly there are spouses and parents and dear close loved ones we've missed. And I don't want to make light of that at all. But I'd like to encourage you to go one layer out from that. Who are some of the other people who have influenced your life so much that you thank God for them? Who it would be lovely to imagine at your Thanksgiving table. What are some thoughts? Ann?
Well, back when before I married, I lived with a family here in Dallas. Their daughter was a year behind me at Baylor, and she joined Wilshire when she graduated. And I lived with them for 8 years. And it was a wonderful experience because they demonstrated the kind of family life that I never had growing up. And the big Sunday dinners after church, and then we'd go into the living room and sit around talking and remembering and conversing. And I never had that growing up. And that just is still embedded in my memory about how family life could be.
Thanks for a family who took Ann in when she was a young person, fresh out of Baylor, and showed her a family life that she had never known. That's exactly what I'm thinking of.
So are you also thinking of talking about people who are one step away, but who have passed, or who are
they can be
just
present.
not be,
Yeah,
who are still
they can be
around
living or
who
dead.
start being brought
Yeah.
up? Okay.
They can be living great. Dwight?
I still remember my Sunday school teacher when I was growing up in a small community in Louisiana. She always gave me, she and my mother were close friends from childhood days, a box of chocolate-covered cherries. We were of financial situation such that we didn't buy that kind of stuff, but it came from her. It probably cost her about 30 cents back then.
Yeah.
And but I got that every Christmas. To this day, I cannot get through Christmas without seeing it, remembering Myra Melder, and getting a box of chocolate-covered cherries. I remember the person and the food. I don't eat chocolate-covered cherries during the rest of the year.
Right. But the power of that gift of a small box of chocolate cherries to you as a child was so powerful that it forged a memory for you that sparks gratitude.
Well, my great aunt was one of those who worked with grandma to make the custard. But she would, every year, she'd be like 88, 90, and she would sit in her chair and say at home, and she'd say, "No, I'm not coming over. I'm just a bother. I don't want to come. I want to stay here. I've got my sweet Sioux chicken and dumplings. I'm fine. That's all I'm getting." And Dad would just keep going, "You are coming. You are coming. Robert's coming to get you. I'm sending Robert. I'm ordering him to come and get you. And if you are not ready, he's going to pick you up and bring you back in his car, and it's convertible. You're coming back, driving down the highway in your bathrobe or whatever you're going to be wearing, but that's what you're going to be wearing, so you better be ready." And she was ready, but my gosh, she would drive like 90 up Central with the top down, and this 90-year-old, and she showed up going, and he drove as fast as he could up the driveway and slammed on the brakes with her going.
So good memories.
Oh, it's so great. But he knocked himself out. He said, "You are coming.
Yeah.
You're going to be part of our family. You
Forced
are part of our
inclusion.
family." And she had a great time, but it was one of those, she just kept going, no, I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to be a problem.
Yeah.
So
Typical,
it was, I don't know, what do you say? I mean, that was forcing her to do what would be better for her. I don't know. I mean,
Well, sometimes we have to overcome people's stubbornness.
yeah.
What's another example of someone?
Mona and I were looking through the old Wilshire some of them not quite so old Wilshire directories.
Yeah.
And Ann will tell you, and I turned 70 last April, and your friends start departing,
Yeah.
Yep.
you know,
Right.
to the heavenly grounds up there. And there's fewer and fewer of that generation left. I remember Margaret and Wendell Cook.
Oh, yes.
They made, when we were in Dallas, Daddy was still living, we lived on Ridge Spring and gathered there for Thanksgiving and Christmas. And at Christmas, they always made individual cranberry salads.
Mm-hmm.
And every Christmas dinner,
That's me.
we would sit at the table and the doorbell would ring and it would be Wendell simply dropping off his salad. They didn't want to intrude, but they timed it so that we would have those for Christmas dinner. That's such a small thing. You multiply that
Right.
times many, many, many times, and very grateful.
Right. Yeah. It's funny how food keeps surfacing in all of this. Isn't it? We should have had brunch today with this. Someone else with a memory or a connection on this? Anyone? Yeah.
We used to go to my great aunts. They were two sisters lived together in Hamilton, which is right on the edge kind of the hill country. And of course, in the fall, it was beautiful, so it was a good time to go. But over the years, my great aunt's meals got worse and worse. But she was still healthy, she was still in her home. You couldn't, I mean, it was a tradition that just could not be broken.
Right.
So when she finally went into a nursing home and she was almost 100, it was somewhat of a relief.
Somewhat of a relief that you didn't have to do that anymore, right? So here's this week's funeral story that's relevant. Yesterday afternoon, I did a service for a woman who, as typical of these pickup funeral services, the family could tell me very, very, very little. I had very little to work with. There was one story that surfaced that rose to the top that I had something to work with. And it was a story about when this woman was a younger woman. Her brother, who since passed, she loved to fish. They loved to fish. And her brother had snuck around, had a 10 to 12 pound fish that he put on a hook and threw it in the water without her seeing. And she thought she caught the fish. She reeled in this 10-pound fish, right? And it became family lore from then ever about the big fish she caught. And the moral of the story to me is the things we do to help others build themselves up are the things that last, the memories we retain, much more than the things we do to tear other people down.
That's one of the things you do when you say you're thankful for somebody. I know if I say I'm thankful for you, you probably feel 10 times better about yourself. Going, somebody is thankful for me and likes me and
Right.
is thought of me. And when you receive a gift out of the blue, you're thankful.
You're thankful.
And you feel so great.
Right.
And we normally don't do that. We normally aren't thankful. You're not thankful for your car until it breaks down.
You're not thankful
and then
for your
you
car
get it
until it breaks
fixed,
down. That's
and all of a
true.
sudden it's working, and you're going.
Absence
"I'm so
makes the heart grow
thankful."
fonder.
Yeah. So
Right.
those are the things that it's so neat that he does do that. So I'm thankful for you.
Yeah. Is there a comment online, Charlene? That may be an old one.
It was Ellen's.
Yeah, it just popped up for me. Yeah, Dwayne?
I had a birthday recently.
Happy
Another
birthday.
one. And it dawned on me, that almost all of my seminary professors are dead. And of course, I'm 83, so they ought to be dead.
They ought to be dead.
But I'm grateful for them.
Yeah.
And all except one or two.
Yeah. Except one, yeah, there's always those one or two, right?
So it's great that we're thankful for people when they're alive and let them know too, as opposed to
Yeah.
going to the graveside.
By the way, just a movie recommendation. If you haven't seen it yet, we were late to the party on this. Finally got around to watching the movie Coda. CODA. That won 3 Academy Awards this past year. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. It's heartwarming. It's challenging. It's a beautiful family story as well. Really, really excellent. Coda. CODA. Yeah. There's my movie recommendation for the weekend. Ahead. For the week ahead. Yeah.
I gotta ask though, why does it say Paul and Timothy right at the top? And then he says, I thank God, I do this, I do that.
Well, so Paul's simply saying Timothy's with me.
Oh.
I'm writing this to you, right? We both have been there. You know both of us. It's simply, he's there.
Okay.
But the letter's from Paul.
Okay.
Yeah. Just don't tell the folks at Jeopardy. They might get confused about all this. Yeah. Memory and thanksgiving go together. Memory and thanksgiving go together. I just think you could take that thought and turn it over and over and over and get so much out of it. I had never really made this connection until this week. When studying and thinking about this passage and how profound that connection is. Memories are built out of community. We have very few memories that we carry forward of things we've done by ourselves. Think about it. Most of our memories are things that have happened with other people. Community shapes memories. This is an idea that's as old as Plato, but it's the reality in our lives. We may have some memories of accomplishments we've done alone, but I challenge you to think about most of your beloved memories and how many of them have to do with other people who've been around you and a part of your life. So when we gather around the table this week, wherever you may be, when you pause to give thanks for those who are with you and for the food that's before you, say a prayer of gratitude for those who've gone before you. That great cloud of witnesses who are around us but unseen to us today, because they have shaped who we are, and they've probably shaped what you're eating as well, which could be a beautiful reminder of the legacy that carries on, right? The legacy of love that carries on.
I was listening to something on NPR this weekend, and they were talking about depression and things around the holidays. And this scientist said, human beings were not designed to live alone. They were designed to live in community.
Right.
And so when that gets out of whack, you got a problem.
Yeah, beautiful.
May I say one more thing?
Yeah.
I apologize, I'm talking.
No, we're so glad you're here.
But this is bringing back memories for me, obviously. On the pictures out here of Wilshire from the 1950s and 60s, there's one picture from around 1960, although you wouldn't know it. It's in the chapel. My father is pastor. They're having communion. Way on the front row, deacons are on the front row, but way over on the left, on the front pew, is a little flowered hat. That is Luana. I know that hat. I know that is Luana. She had just married Daddy fairly recently, and there's a tiny little head sitting next to her, which you would miss unless you're really looking for it, and that's my head sitting next to her. We're in front of the baby grand piano. Delana O'Brien is playing the piano. Now, Wilshire had many pianists, including Anita Hood, who's here today.
Right.
and who gave me some of her old music a couple of years ago.
Wow.
Since I played for, and 3 times a week I sat on that front row and watched those pianists, watch their feet, watch their hands. When I say it's in my blood, it's in my blood.
Yeah.
And I think of Anita and how she was so instrumental as part of my the legacy.
Wow, that's beautiful. Thank you so much. Kathy?
I was thinking about my older brother. I had 2 older brothers. One was 5 years older, one was 10 years older. And the one who was 10 years older than I was in World War II. But he was big brother to me. I was maybe 8 years old, and
Yeah.
he was 18. But he wrote me the sweetest letters. He would write, you know, and he'd say, "My dear little Kathleen," and then he'd go and he'd say something about, "How are your dolls?" And Cutie and Curly. I had 2 dogs, Cutie and Curly. "How Cutie, Curly, and your dolls?" And I thought that was so sweet,
Sweet.
you know, for
Yeah.
an 18-year-old.
These acts of kindness aren't forgotten, right? Let's pray together, and then Charlene will come and take our other prayer concerns. Lord, thank you for this day of remembrance and these beautiful stories. Thank you for the gifts of taste and smell and sight and memory that combine to bring us into thanksgiving to you. We pray through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Do you think it's cold in here?